Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Mary, and I am going to be the moderator for today's debate. Today, we are going to discuss autism spectrum disorder, which is also going to be referred to as ASD in this debate, and how it affects certain aspects of life through various transition periods. Individuals with ASD are likely to face many challenges while in a period of transition. As individuals with ASD transition out of a school or clinical setting, they face many unique challenges and advancements as they progress. Once an individual with ASD has left a school or clinical setting, the individual will have many different options that will involve them either requiring assistance or care from the community, or facing situations with the empowerment and support to live a more independent lifestyle. Specifically today, we are going to look at 4 areas of interest that are important to look at when discussing transitions for individuals with ASD. These 4 areas that will be discussed will be financial situations, transportation, future opportunities, as well as health. As these main areas of focus are discussed, the different aspects of empowerment and care will be debated. Today, Catherine will be our stater, and she will be introducing each of our topics as they come up. Those standing with the empowerment side and who will be advocating as such are Lauren and Andrea. On the other hand, Brooke will be debating in favor of the care side. Each side of empowerment and care will have up to 2 minutes to make their case on each area of focus and up to a minute to rebut what the other side has to say.
Financial options available to those with disabilities is an important area of concern, especially for those in the transition period of such. When individuals with disabilities go through financial transition periods, it involves knowing how the individual will be able to support themselves. If the individual is not able to provide for themselves financially, the family will have to find out how they are going to receive funding to cover the cost of living for the individual that they are taking care of, or how the family will receive funding to pay for the benefits for an individual with autism spectrum disorder being employed, as well as benefits for society as a whole. With that being said, in regards to looking at this from a care standpoint, it is very difficult for individuals with autism spectrum disorder to find jobs. However, with the promotion of job skills and daily living skills being taught to individuals with autism spectrum disorder, over time, it would probably become easier to help those individuals find jobs, and in suit, companies would be more willing to hire those individuals since they have the skills to be a good employee.
Okay, it looks like we already have a question coming in from the audience, and it is from a parent who is asking us, what benefits are there for encouraging and pushing my child with autism spectrum disorder to get a job as a young adult? Why should this be a priority for me as a parent? I ask our debaters to please keep this question in mind as you ladies debate the topic of financial independence.
Through looking at the economic benefits for the individual with autism spectrum disorder who would be employed, as well as the benefits for society as a whole, we can see why empowerment of finances is important for transition-aged adults with autism spectrum disorder. Lost productivity and resource cost for people with ASD is decreased when they are employed. For instance, if a person with ASD is employed, it is likely that less money will need to be spent on that individual because that person is able to make at least some income for him or herself. It is very expensive to provide care for individuals with ASD when they are not able to live a more independent lifestyle.
Okay, so this also means that the rest of our society is spending less money because there is less money that's needed to be spent on finding care and treatment for the individual with ASD. So this can cut back on spendings for people with autism, even if it is as simple as not having to provide financial assistance to a more independent living individual with ASD, such as parents having to financially provide for the child with ASD past their childhood years. So a lot more places are hiring those with disabilities as well, so their parents, again, don't have to worry about the financial aspect of helping their child with bills or other finances that they may need assistance with.
However, with all of that being said, it is very difficult for individuals with ASD to find competitive and skillful jobs because many individuals with ASD do not have the appropriate skill set to do so, especially if they are on the lower end of the spectrum. Employees are often reluctant to hire individuals with ASD because they will worry it will cause deficits in their company, or they will not have a high quality of performance when performing tasks on the job. There is research readily available that shows that employing individuals with ASD provides no additional cost to the employer, and it's actually beneficial to the employees and their organization. And when employers were asked to compare their employees with ASD to those without, there's actually no significant differences in their performance. With that being said, unfortunately, employers are most likely still going to be reluctant to hire individuals with ASD until there's a greater amount of research to show this. We have a visual to look at today as well. So if we take a look at this following chart, you can see how low that percentage is for people with ASD and the amount of true independence, especially when you look at finding a job. For instance, we can see that only 58 of individuals with ASD had jobs after finishing high school, and it is likely that those jobs were not high paying. We can also see on this visual that 32% of individuals with ASD had a job soon after finishing high school. However, it is likely that those were also not high-paying jobs. Many jobs that are high-paying require a post-secondary degree. We can additionally see from this chart that only 36% of individuals with ASD even attended any sort of post-secondary education programs, and only 30% of those individuals attended an actual 2- or 4-year college facility. This greatly impacts the types and amount of jobs that are available to the population of individuals we're discussing today.
Parents of young adults with high-functioning ASD report that being employed is one of the highest priorities for not only their children, but also for themselves as parents of the individual. This shows that individuals with autism spectrum disorder have the motivation to become employed, and their family is supportive of this desire.
So it's important for those with autism to be encouraged to pursue their own opportunities, such as finding a job. So because so many people with ASD live at home with their parents, this support is crucial. So people on the autism spectrum have a difficult enough time as it is with functioning in the workplace or having anxiety about getting a job. So any new experience can discourage them from continuing to try. So if they don't have the support from the family, it'll be beneficial all around. So the more financially independent they can be, the better. And to be financially independent, then the individuals must have jobs.
Though many individuals with high-functioning ASD report that they are aware of being independent involves being able to manage their own finances, many do report that they know that they lack the skills and support to achieve this. This can be due to anxiety related to not knowing what to expect in the workplace, as well as simply not having the appropriate knowledge to understand how to independently manage the finances on their own. These individuals also report that they are aware of not being financially independent is a huge barrier to achieving independence. This barrier is huge in gaining true independence for the individuals on the spectrum. Further education on finances, as well as money management skills, could be certain skills that parents could work on, as that was a question asked by the audience previously.
Another area of concerns in regards to those with disabilities is transportation options that are available. It's very important for individuals to be independent, and part of that involves being able to provide your own transportation to go to social gatherings and jobs. The promotion of showing individuals ways to find their own transportation is important to their success as independent adults. Think about a typical teenager or even a young adult. A key milestone to this age range is the ability to start driving oneself and the ability to be on your own and get yourself from point A to point B. Having to rely on a parent or caregiver doesn't promote adult independence as would being able to provide your own transportation, whether that's learning to drive yourself or being capable of figuring out the public transportation system in your city.
It looks like we have some more questions coming in from the audience. The first question is from a parent, and their question is, how can I better prepare my teenager for adjusting to the public transportation system on their own? Another question we have coming in is from another parent who is asking, are there any skills that I can assist with when it comes to getting my teenager with ASD prepared for using the public transportation systems on their own? And should I assist with their navigational systems myself? Debaters, please consider these questions as you make your next arguments.
All right, to answer this question, there are many public transportation systems for those on the spectrum, such as subways, trains, and bus systems. There are also many disability transport services as well that cover routes around town daily. Because of these transportation systems being made available to the general public as well as those with special needs, it makes their lives more convenient and they don't have to feel like a burden on their families. Another statistic I wanted to share is that 1.5 to 3.5 million of Americans have autism. In the next decade, 500,000 will transition into adulthood. So that is a lot of people that should be able to use the public transportation systems.
So as Lauren stated, with 1.5 million to 3.5 million Americans, that's much more people on public transportations, thusly increasing the needs for the services to help those out on the spectrum. So because of increased needs, that's why there's special services for those who make trips daily to certain supermarkets and shopping centers, and then they drop people back off at their places of residence afterwards.
Cognition and mental processings make transportation really difficult for those on the spectrum, though. Problems include spatial skills, navigation, and social skills. Due to these limited skills, it makes traveling hard, especially using public transportation due to having to read bus schedules, remembering routes, or even interpreting street or bus signs. The limited social skills that these individuals have inhibit them from asking people for directions towards certain terminals, identifying social norms on space and seating on the bus, and how simply to interact with individuals both at the pickup stops but also as on the bus as well with the bus driver or other recipients. Cost can also interfere with the transportation as well. This resorts back to those poor money management skills as discussed previously. Availability of services in the area can cause a strain for the individual as well. Often, certain public transportation services aren't even offered depending on the geographic location. These are the types of skills that could be built on by parents or educators as asked by the audience.
Public transportation systems can assist those to be able to get to jobs to assist with their independence. If they are able to use public transportation, it's also less of a strain on their families as well. The families can even stick to their full-time jobs and they wouldn't have to worry about their teenagers or young adults as much. If they are also able to handle the transportation systems alone, it could mean that they can even live independently on their own.
Many individuals with ASD are restricted or unable to operate vehicles, though, so their parents are often driving them around to various locations. This creates a huge lack of self-determination, social skills, and a lack of employment. 80% of those on the autism spectrum rely solely on family members to drive them around, thus making parents do part-time jobs instead of working full-time, ultimately creating a snowball effect on funds and finances for the entire family. Travel training is another cost that the family may not want to spend on either. This involves the individual learning how to independently travel on their own. However, this service isn't free and can often be super costly for the family during already difficult financial times. Those who cannot drive or travel on their own can experience depression or feelings of loneliness, which make it even harder to form relationships with others outside of the family.
The third area of concern to be looked at in regards to individuals with autism spectrum disorder in the transition process is future opportunities they will have. There are many programs with the ability to assist those transitioning and provide them with support and knowledge to become successful individuals. However, on the care side, it can be argued the lack of skill set that is required for those opportunities by the individuals. There are a variety of opportunities for individuals with autism spectrum disorder after high school. They can include continuing education at a university or trade school, or even attending an adult day program locally. They can also include entering the workforce, as well as even attending young adult social groups to help them network and create friendships.
We have some additional questions coming in from the audience. The first is from a teacher who is asking, how do I better prepare my students for post-secondary educational environments? We have a second question that is also coming in from a parent who is asking, how can I know which future opportunities are best for my child? I ask that the debaters please consider these questions as you are making your next arguments.
All right, and here we will show our second visual. And it will talk about how various programs are designed to assist with transition to secondary educational settings. Various research discusses a STEP ASD model, as you can see in this visual. The STEPPed Transition and Education Program for students with autism spectrum disorder is a program designed by secondary education providers to assist in teaching tools needed to succeed in a variety of environments outside of the classroom. In this visual, you can see the steps that would be needed to be taken in order to use this model in the secondary educational setting. The STEP ASD program emphasizes the use of self-determination and self-regulation as tools the individual can utilize.
So the articles explain that there's a huge emphasis on educating the individual on their own disability and the various challenges in the college setting as well. So in addition to this, the STEP ASD program provides teaching tools on how to effectively manage stress, doing problem solving, and even goal setting as well. So some articles outline the exact steps needed to execute a STEPS program at a local college, which would be constructed anywhere for individuals with disabilities. To better prepare a child for this environment, parents and educators can also focus more time on social skills that would be needed in a secondary educational setting. So to answer the question above that came in from the audience, parents and teachers can prepare their students for post-secondary educational environments by education alone. So the younger you prepare them, the better. They could begin to look into options for the child, such as nearby colleges with night classes or programs that can accommodate students with special needs to live away at college. So it's all about the education, and the younger they are, the younger that they are, and the better that they're prepared, the better for them overall.
Many young people with disabilities are exiting high school without those skills, attitudes, and experiences needed to succeed in a secondary education environment that a STEP model might be performed in. Without these skills, they will surely fail in their classes and will not be able to earn much success. Some children on the autism spectrum are not high functioning enough to attend a secondary education setting at all, in which case the STEPS ASD model would not be sufficient in teaching the skills relevant for their lifestyle. In high school, there are limited opportunities for students to learn about how to do well in secondary education learning environments. The opportunities are limited because of the lack of professional development from teachers and the needs of those with disabilities. Because of this lack of education, many people who potentially could thrive in a secondary educational setting are not getting the proper skills taught to them while still in the K-12 setting.
There's another question coming in from the audience, and this time it is coming from an employer. The employer is asking, how can I help my employee with ASD succeed and excel within our company to create for equal opportunities? Again, I ask as debaters that you consider this as you make your next points.
Okay, to answer that question, vocational and work study programs are designed to promote independence in the workplace. These environments thrive on ongoing education to the employees who monitor and mentor the individuals with autism to better achieve positive results in the workplace. To answer the employer's question above, employers could better assist by offering ongoing training to the employees without disabilities on the various challenges and rewards offered when working aside an individual on the autism spectrum.
With that being said, 56% of young adults with disabilities actually spend time in sheltered day centers or sheltered workshops and not actually out in the workforce. There are typically really low rates of these young adults in the workforce. Many workplaces do not accept those with disabilities and are not welcome to such people. In fact, those adults without intellectual disabilities were 3 times less likely to not attend any sort of daytime activity compared to those with intellectual disabilities. Keeping all of this in mind, it's hard for families of those with disabilities to find work for their loved ones in general.
The final area of concern that we will look at is in relation to the health of the individuals with autism spectrum disorder that are transitioning. We stand on the side that there are several interventions available to promote the independence with your own health, but the care side will say that difficulty with being independent in those interventions can cause those with ASD to rely heavily on others. Independent performance, especially in regards to daily living skills and health, giving yourself medicine, taking your temperature, things like that, may prove difficult for individuals with ASD. These difficulties contribute to poor overall long-term outcomes for individuals. Self-monitoring and the use of an ecological model have been proven a successful use in increasing independence in these individuals.
So there are various interventions available to promote independence, including self-monitoring and individual work systems. So self-monitoring involves teaching the individual to discriminate and make a record of the occurrence or non-occurrence of a target behavior, such as a self-assessment, self-instruction, and self-reinforcement as well. So these would all be helpful with things such as being able to tell if you're sick or not, or if you're in need of getting medication and administering medicine to yourself to make yourself feel better. So this increases their independence because in order to self-monitor, the individual must pay attention to their own behavior. So self-monitoring behavior may have been shown to be successful in individuals with autism, and it reduces stereotypic behavior while increasing daily living skills and in the absence of treatment provider.
With that being said, though, difficulty with independent functioning impacts the overall outcome of those with ASD. Several studies show that adults with ASD rely on others for support in various things, including living skills, which can include a variety of things, such as daily medication, administration of those medications, or daily logs of blood pressure. The way those with ASD are taught skills promote a dependence on prompts and create an over-reliance on adult support, which actually hinders their overall independence. Many teaching strategies for individuals with ASD involve relying on an adult prompter, as well as a reinforcer provided by the adult upon completion of the task. This prompt dependence impedes potential independent success and may increase overall helplessness.
However, using an ecological model can help enable those with disabilities to do daily living health-related tasks like monitoring health conditions and scheduling appointments on their own. This model is ideal for the transition for those with disabilities. It suggests connections and interdependence between people and environments, including relationships between youth and families, friends, and healthcare providers. The model describes the multiple nested environments as well as places the individual at the center. Not to mention that interventions at the individual level that address future independence could improve interactions in adulthood.
Now that might sound all great, but those who aren't as high functioning are unable to do those things for themselves and are unable to express when they're sick or not feeling well. This can cause a plethora of health risks because something could not feel good or could be wrong, but a caregiver doesn't know that until it's potentially too late because the individual with ASD is unable to communicate this to their caregiver. Individuals on the spectrum that are low functioning would not be able to do the types of self-monitoring the empowerment side wants to argue. Often, these individuals are only able to do basic living skills, which are far less than self-monitoring health symptoms. It could be costly to their health if we were to put them in charge of their own healthcare needs.
With all this being said, it is important to discuss concepts of empowerment and care when it comes to looking at a young adult with ASD who is transitioning into the world on their own. As a whole, we tend to side towards empowerment as long as the young adult is high functioning enough to make his or her own decisions when in the process of transitioning into a more independent lifestyle away from their home or care center. The ideas of focus that were discussed today involved financial independence, transportation, future opportunities, as well as health. These areas involve many ethical principles that should be considered not only by the individual, but also by the family and caretakers when it comes to choosing what is right and best for them, such as Compliance Code 1.0, which revolves around responsibility. It looks like we have one last question coming in from the audience. We have an audience member asking us if there are any personal experiences when looking at empowerment versus care.
I personally have had an experience with empowerment versus care. I currently provide ABA services to a 17-year-old client who will eventually transition out of our center. Due to his cultural beliefs and the way his family revolves around their culture and are so heavily involved in that, they believe that he should be transitioning into an environment that involves his farming community and being able to farm on the farm and more of the empowerment side, empowering him to like do all the things that like a male role should do in their family community. However, this particular client has cerebral palsy, is not very high functioning at all. And so there's been a back and forth debate on whether or not that would be the proper setting for him to transition into. This debate in general hasn't been concluded yet because he hasn't transitioned out to a different care setting. But from a professional standpoint, it's very difficult to look at seeing him transition into an environment that he probably won't thrive in purely based on his parents wanting to empower him into that setting. We also have a second example as well.
So to the flip side of that, personal experience that I have is at a previous job where the focus for the clients that were aged 18 to 21, it went from a focus on academic skills and it turned to a focus on daily living skills. So the focus was on promoting those conversational skills, following a chore chart, knowing what you needed to do by the end of the day, even having a job, so to speak, where a couple of the teachers would post job applications on a bulletin board in the main hallway so that they could practice applying for jobs and things like that. And even one specific client that I worked with, I was working alongside a rehabilitation center that comes in right before they turn 21 to see what their interests are, see where their strong suits are, to help them better integrate into the workforce. So for instance, daily living skills he was used to was vacuuming, sweeping, those types of things. So they can utilize that by finding him a job that also pairs with his interest, which are video games, movies, things like that. And they can take that to help him get a job at a movie theater. So I think the promotion of teaching those skills at an earlier age than later can really help aid people and young adults in transitioning as a successful adult.
Okay, thank you for sharing your personal experiences. This concludes our debate for today when looking at empowerment and care during transition periods for young adults with autism spectrum disorder. I would like to thank everyone for joining us today, and I hope that the information that was provided has given you some insight to form your own opinions as to how you feel about empowerment and care for individuals with ASD. Thank you again for your time.